Good morning. Welcome into our session.
Hi, Nicholas.
Hi, Maria.
Hi.
Good day. Good day to all.
Good day.
Yes.
We are ready to start.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just finished our one day.
All right, it is 10:01.
Okay. So we have lots of participants getting in this meeting, and I think it's time, and we should start the section, the event of the day. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is Wei Feng Min, a faculty member at the National Yangming Jiao Tong University, and I serve on the board of the SITL. I will serve as moderator of this event. And before we start the event, the very first section of the 2024 SITL workshop series, I would like to express a great appreciation to all of you on behalf of the SITL. Thank you for participating in today's event and being one of the agents devoted to understanding the spectrum of the teaching styles, practicing it in your professional fields, and disseminating it for its worldwide recognition and more profound knowledge. This year, we arranged 5 sessions in the 2024 SITL workshop series from March to May. Each section will entail 2 presentations on diverse issues about the spectrum, such as social and emotional learning, technology embedding, PETE, physical literacy, and more. I can expect that we will learn a lot by listening to each presentation. Each presentation prepared well by our presenters of the year. Okay, so today's first session is a case study about implementing strategy in the productive cluster. The presenters are Pei-Yu and Professor Deng-Yau. You will have 20 minutes to present your findings, and a 5-minute discussion will be open for our participants after your presentation. You can start your presentation as you are ready.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm Robin Deng Yao, and thank you to host for the introduction, and the audience are there. As can show the PPT. Hey. Okay, is everyone see can take a look the PPT?
Yes, pretty clear.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Next page. It don't work.
Sorry, wait for a second. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Pei-Yu, and today Professor Xu, who is my doctor advisor, we are from National Taiwan Normal University. Today we will going to share our research. The topic is implementing the spectrum of teaching style for the middle school student social and emotion learning in Taiwan, a case study of style G. At the beginning, I want to say thanks to today's moderate Fan Min professor. He provides many valuable advice on this study. Thank you so much. In addition, my doctor advisor, Professor Xu, will say something to everyone.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you, Pei-Yu. As we know that researchers or teachers who are familiar with the spectrum and the teaching and can understand the practicality and the actual effectiveness of teaching style. However, past research was dominated by academic value and failed to pay attention to the effect of developmental channels in the spectrum. Now, this is resulted in very few studies causing the influence of spectrum teaching to be underrated. So I think in 2008 edition, Teaching Future Education, this book, the task described the developmental channel as this. By identifying landmark behaviors, teachers can readily see the affiliation and the influence of the many design variations that contribute to teaching and learning. The spectrum, with this emphasis on the developmental channel, provides a framework for study the influence of each teaching learning behaviors on the learners' developmental experience. I think this is a clue in can lead us to find something. Yeah. And in developmental channel of a strategy, that is all design variations in this behavior focus on two variables. And the first, the number of clues. And second, the opportunity for assistants to work with another person or in a group. Next page. Under the contemporary evidence-based research trend, research on the developmental channels of spectrum is necessary and should be implemented in the real PE teaching setting, I think. As we all know that, driven by education reform, social and emotional learning has received more and more attention in recent years, especially in Taiwan. Many teaching models like sport education model, TPSR model, inquiry approach, cooperating learning, or physical literacy, adaptive PE continue to emphasize these issues. Therefore, among the developmental channel of spectrums, we chose social and emotional channel to conduct the research. We want to know the effects of a strategy on social and emotional learning. And we chose a strategy for research. So I make simple opening, then Pei, please. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Professor. Okay, before we get started, I would like to introduce today's agenda. In the first part of this presentation, I'm going to talk about background. After that, I will briefly review some literature. About research design, I will first describe a case and explain how data was collected and analyzed. Then I will present our findings and results about this case. Finally, in the conclusion, contribution, elimination, and the future works of this thesis will be discussed. I'm a PE teacher and I have been teaching for 10 years. And this is a very striking example that came up in my recent class. As a result, we start the game. Here's how the game works. Whoever wins gets off the court and goes to the other team. But there's one team playing all the time. During the halftime, one of the students began to shout at his teammates and even hit him. After he calmed down, I called him over to ask why. He said he thought his teammate didn't want to listen to his strategy, so cause his teammates to lose. He feel very, very angry, so he hit him. Based on my observation, these negative emotions are largely due to students' lack of interpersonal communication skills. However, such negative relationships are more and more common among peers. This has also made me realize that how to guide students to face emotion has become very important. Indeed, as for the benefit brought by social emotion, Castle already know that it can help improve academic performance, social or work performance, and the purpose of that learning as SITL has 5 important connections. There are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsibility decision-making. There is also a growing body of research pointing out that integrating this ability into physical education classes offers an innovative way to develop emotion, intelligence, and social skill, as well as physical health. However, there are still different views on how teachers know that different types of learner can learn the emphasis by SEL in physical education curriculum. Because as usual in PE, skill have always been the focus on teachers in classes. Teachers believe that learning skills and practice repeatedly will allow students to make progress in physical, cognitive, and even social and emotion. Thus, this increased knowledge about how students learn, including difference in learning style, self-regulation, and intelligence. Teachers are becoming increasingly more aware of the cognitive diversity of students. This increasing knowledge doesn't necessarily translate, however, into knowledge about how to teach different types of learners or how to apply information to change curriculum and instructional practice. Therefore, some scholars began to think about how to think about this matter from the perspective of teachers. They are support education model, TPSR, CI, and ABL, although addressing the traditional skills based on teaching model, but it is still not to explain why layered teaching model can solve the change in SEL oration. However, in 1994, Mosston, a processual spectrum of teaching style, suggests that different teaching styles are appropriate for achieving different learning outcome in variety of domains area, like physical, social, emotion, and cognitive development. And they say many of the other myriad of teaching models are fragmented, deal with only part of the teaching phenomenon without demonstrate the relationship to other aspects. The spectral styles is a regime for reproducing knowledge to producing new knowledge. Style always vary in terms of who makes a particular decision related to the lesson, including decision made priority to class, during class, and after class. In this strategy, these teachers select a new and unfamiliar subject matter that invites the learners to apply their reasoning skills to ask questions that logically and skill to ask question lead to the discovery of the single correct and anticipate the response. When learners differ in their own views from those of others, social and emotion are occur in the classroom. Therefore, they are important factor for students to exclude in physical education teaching, as well as for students to exclude in physical, cognitive, and motor skill. because teacher behavior can not only affect students' thinking change, participant and learning, but also is likely to have an intermediate effect on student cognition and make students effectively realize later they are an active participant in learning. Unlike SETPSR, CI, ABL, Mosston spectrum of teaching style differs from curriculum and instruction design in each section of teaching process. The teaching style in the spectrum can adapt and adjust according to different teachings, object, and learning context. This makes teaching more flexible and able to meet the needs of different classes and a students group. For teachers, it may be more flexible, include the broad capability of SEL. Most importantly, learners' instruction, emotion, and social ability are assessed through visible behavior outcome. Both all SETPSR, CIABL, their finding indicate the appropriate physical education teaching model can in fact promote the development of this skill. Therefore, the purpose of this study was to understand the teacher how to use style G to encourage a student to understand the teacher how to use style G and develop layered social and emotion learning behavior. Based on our study purpose, the research question as follows. 1. How did teacher design social and emotion learning in physical education course using style G? 2. How does the use of teaching style G by teachers influence students' development of social and emotion learning behaviors in classroom? 3. What challenge do a teacher encounter in actual operations? The curriculum study employed in 1989 case study. Let me describe the case first. The chapter of these schools, area located in cities and suburbs, most of the parents belongs to blue-collar job. Their working hours and quality of life are unstable, and they have less time to take care of their students' learning status. And so also they are in grandpa families. A class chapters, they are lower a total of 25 students, including 15 female students and 10 male students. Peers are kind and accepting of each other's. And why we pick it? Because 3 students are studying in the resource class. 2 students have emotion control problems. 1 student is addicted to phone. And last, they are my class. As instruction design, the follow figure is present the core object of these lessons and what they will deal with. We take the transmission and the reception, attack, and the defense as the core concept of the ed course, and the teacher uses this strategy to run through this ed course and separate deal with the course of SEL. Because time is limited, I'm going to introduce in one section. Between 6 to 7 sections, the student must have to solve problem in this situation. This score is currently 0 to 0. There are only 10 seconds left. A team got the ball. They only need to score in the last 10 seconds to win. If you are B team, how can you do stop their scoring? Okay, and And session 6 to 7, the strategy is focused on 3 parts. At a impact, we choose invasion games for core object using handball to do it. The concept of at section is attack and defense, focus on pass and catch. At impact, the teacher presents the question to students. The students they decide the steps to take the question. To ask the teacher for discover the one correct solution to the question. The discover process in strategy involves learners thinking and doing. The discovery process is visible to the teacher. At the past impact, students show their growth track through the record of each lesson on the whiteboard. Teacher can also use students' records to assess their learning progress. Most importantly, although students will return from the coverage teaching of the teaching spectrum to guide teaching in the process of learning, they will still return to the spirit of convergence teaching in the end. Here I will start play a video of what we were actually doing in class.
There's no voice.
Yes, there's no sound. So stop sharing your screen, and then when you
Okay, they are doing their work. Okay, the operation process is showing in the video. And now we will go back to the slide. Data was collected by a worksheet of student video of student during class and the Fox group interview. Fox group interview were arranged with 4 male and 4 female students. Interview data was at December 25th. The effect of some invasion could be ascribed to the impact of assessment, observation, or other feature of the data. First, in-total data coding classroom like table 1. And second, identify key concept like table 2. And in all process, read, revise all the time, and then write papers. I could ask the interviews sentence by myself. For example, in A1, interview, she said, I can understand a situation from multiple views. And I ask myself, why does she think she can learn to recognize different people's points of view in game situation? Okay, for the above, we have covered as evidence by this class. And this student use a style G model to simulate student ability further make decision, reflect, and solve problem, while interaction with themselves and the other in response to their own social and emotion learning behavior in different current situations. And it provides a clear, direct for invasion, the effective of teaching style G in promoting social and emotional learning outcome among students. Okay, first, we are agree the teaching is a chain of decision making. And here are something discoveries. One, before the transition from pre-impact to impact, teachers have to realize that they have to change from matters to factor, believe that students can become problem solver. Two, in the course of impact, teachers must be able to know that their role as factor is to grasp whether students can achieve the result that teachers intend to drive. If students cannot make good decisions, they may have to pull back from style G to style F.
Excuse
Three,
me,
in my
Pei.
previous class,
Yes, excuse me, Pei. I may you conclude your presentation in 2 minutes. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And three, in my previous class, the teacher's role was only to guide and the students only listened to the teacher's choice in terms of who was making the decision. Okay, the second, this is all students' data. Okay, the findings suggest that teaching strategy enhance student engage, promote effective communication, improve conflict resolution skill, provide individual support, and may lead to long-term positive outcomes from student social and emotional well-being. Overall, the most important study understand important consider teaching method like strategy in promoting the student development attack the critical role education concludes student social emotion context with class and environment. A suggestion in Taiwan's unique physical education environment, Mosston teaching style over advantage due to its flexibility and adaptability. Mosston approach stands out of its easy of use within limits, schedule, and its ability to cater to the diverse learning environment, student group, research approach, on the future, we must have class experience design for independent discussion. Okay, thank you for all.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. So, do you have any comments or questions from the audience? I think time is still available for one questions or comments. Do anyone want to interact with Pei or Professor Shi for more deep understanding for their presentation, their study?
I have a question.
Yes, Kelly?
Thank you for the presentation. And I think exploring style G with that range of students and the way that you did it was really cool and interesting. I'm curious about, it seemed like in your video, the questions in style G were specific to the content, the cognitive knowledge of the students. But you talked a little bit about how the style G may support the personal and social development as well. So if I missed it, I apologize, but how did you use style G to try to prompt the affective learning as well as the cognitive or psychomotor learning? if that makes sense.
Okay, and thank you for your question. And about this question, we should go back to Mosston, and they said on page 7, Mosston provide his teaching experience, and he want to identify a framework, a model, a theory that will embrace the approach that exists in teaching. The strategy emphasizes cooperation, social skill, and self-directing learning, benefiting students' social emotion development. So depending on teaching goals, student characters, and learning environment, other style may be more suitable. Teachers should choose teaching styles based on specific needs and be flexible in adapting to changing curriculums. Yeah, and it's thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw that Akis, if I pronounce well, do you have one more question?
Yes,
Please.
greetings
Yeah.
from Greece. Hello to everybody. I would like
Hi.
to ask, what is the curriculum of teaching style in Taiwan, and how does this curriculum works in physical education at secondary education in Taiwan?
Okay, I think that's a good question. In the concept of Taiwan's education culture, entering a good school is regarded as the focus of thinking about the way out of life. So junior high school students' main goal are limited to studying for tests and schoolwork, resulting in other personality development, self-exploration, cooperation, and creative are easily ignored. So in the context of Taiwan, using the style G model may pose some challenges and require a certain condition to meet. In summary, to successfully use the G model of the teaching spectrum in Taiwan culture, teachers need to respect local cultural background and values, understand students' needs, and adjust teaching strategy flexibility according to a specific curriculums. At the same time, consider ration should be given to factors such as education system and assessment system to ensure the applicability and effective of teaching methods. Yeah, I think it is my response.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think due to time limitation, I think we should move on. So our next presenter, Professor Jamie Brunsdon, will deliver the second presentation of this session. Professor Brunsdon is an assistant professor at the University of Memphis. In his presentation, he will talk about the story of a faculty member who tried to read, interpret, implement, and reflect on his or her understanding and actions of the spectrum. So, Professor Brunsdon, time is yours.
Okay, can you see my PowerPoint screen?
We can.
Yes.
Okay,
Clear.
you can see the big one, not the small one.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so welcome everyone. The title of my presentation is I'm Trusting You, Don't Let Me Down, One Peak Faculty Member's Efforts at Employing the Spectrum Model. Before beginning, I'd like to acknowledge my thanks to the Spectrum Institute for their support of my work But I would also like to dedicate this work to those that were influenced by the events that took place on September 7th in Memphis. So this presentation is structured as follows. First, I'll provide some background information. Second, I'll provide an overview of the methods. Third, I'll overview the findings. And then fourth, I'll talk about some conclusion. So in the past 2 decades, a series of spectrum experts have called for the search for the study of the spectrum, and specifically highlighted a series of considerations that they have asked the field to appraise. While there are several considerations, one such area is the relationship between the spectrum and models-based practice. And so given that the spectrum was once considered as the most significant advancement in the theory of physical education pedagogy, as well as the contemporary view that models-based practice is a leading trend among practitioners and researchers alike, I think we're confident in saying that we've only touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of possible spectrum research. And so the genesis of this research is really about cultivating a new vision for the field, or working towards that cultivation, and specifically to move the field away from what many have called a precarious situation toward one based on flourishing. And so in that way, I'll talk about, well, I guess I'd like to direct you to 2 prior discussions. The first is linked to the spectrum presentation that I did last year, and the second is the paper that Autumn has just shared, where I kind of outline this in more detail. But what is a model? So a model essentially outlines a theoretical approach to teaching and learning. So every theory or every model envisions a unique teaching and learning environment. All require teachers to teach differently and to learn students to learn differently. Models are argued to have 4 distinct components, and depending on your context and depending on who you're reading, this can differ. But this is the main idea, so the main purpose and aim of the model, critical elements, learning aspirations, and pedagogy. Here are some example pedagogical models, and following our prior conversation, and obviously in knowing this community, this is not new, right? We're all very aware of these kinds of approaches. In plain semantics, I think this is important. There are different types of pedagogical models. There are pedagogical models in themselves. There are these things called hybrid models, and there are also kind of composite pedagogical models. So hybrids are those when 2 established models are organized together and create a modified framework or kind of a new kind of model. So, for example, teaching aims for understanding when merged with sport education becomes TGSE, and vice versa. A composite pedagogical model refers to when a new independent theory or framework emerges or is merged with other theories with the goal of creating a new model. And so this is where I got the idea of kind of merging spectrum theory and neo-Aristotelian virtue ethics, as I outlined in the paper. And so, as I just said, that's what I've done. I've taken the central components of 2 independent theories, and I've used Casey's and Kirk's structure in terms of main idea, critical elements, learning aspirations, pedagogy, to form what I could call as the spectrum model. And so the general premise is the same. However, the model itself that I'm proposing has become more flourishing oriented. And so it houses 2 main ideas, including eudaimonia and phronesis, houses 3 critical elements, including, where appropriate, decision-making is shared between teachers and pupils across the Langnau styles, flourishing friendships, and virtue and character. And there are a series of 6 intended learning aspirations that you can see right there. And so altogether, this forms the spectrum model, and obviously is significant to the current presentation. And again, I remind you, please feel free to go and review the article where I outline this in more detail. So the purpose of this study, as outlined in the presentation, is to provide a first account of the model in an authentic context, and specifically to investigate how one faculty member employed the model within a K-12 setting. 3 research questions were salient. These included: what organizational structure, methods, and content did the faculty member use to employ the model? What teaching styles did the faculty member predominantly use to employ the model? And then what barriers and facilitators influence the faculty member's ability to employ the model? And so there were a variety of intended outcomes related to this, but at the very minimum, my aspirations were to advance the humanistic education experience and growth of those involved in the study, provide an authentic description of flourishing-oriented pedagogies in physical education, and is to problematize the extent to which a new model, especially one that is maybe affective or moral-oriented, could find a home within the profession of physical education. From a design perspective, a teaching experiment design, as informed by revenue, was employed. There are 4 characteristics of this design. The first, it aspires to examine teaching, learning, and subject matter of complex systems. It describes the types of learning occurred in the classroom as a result of the curriculum. It aspires to identify and unpack, from the teacher's perspective, the opportunities and challenges that arise during teaching, and to develop, refine, and provide illustrations of a theory to advance a field and subsequently everyday practice. While data was collected, both from the perspective of the student and teacher with regards to learning and assessment, this was not a priority within the present study, partly because we believe that it's unethical to be advocating or describing what was learned through an experience before actually having the ability to describe a pedagogy itself. And then throughout all of this, we maintained an interpretive social constructivist paradigm to looking at the data and data collection and analysis. And so the participant was Freddie, a physical education and sport pedagogy faculty member. At the time of the study, he identified as white, able-bodied male between the ages of 25 and 35 years old. He had 5 years teaching experience in K-12 schools. He had experience coaching at the regional, collegiate level, and semi-professional level. He had less than 7 years experience working in higher education, so was considered an early career faculty member. It was a nationally recognized expert in models-based practice. In terms of the setting, a smaller than average size K-12 school was decided to be the setting for this study, codename Fort Philia. The principals and administrators of the school really valued quality physical education, and this school was home to 3 full-time physical education teachers. In terms of demographics of the students, there was approximately 1,000 students based at the school. 55% of those identified as white, 30% black, 7% Hispanic, 6% Asian, and 2% identified as other or multiple. 30% of students were identified as economically disadvantaged, and the resources and facilities at Fort Philia were described as moderate to insufficient. In terms of the physical education setting, at the elementary level, so K through 5, students received 2 60-minute physical education lessons per week. And the kind of models that dominated this space were the skills themes, multi-skill, and multi-activity models. At the secondary level, so from grade 6 through 12, students received 3 75-minute lessons per week in physical education. And as you can see, there was a range of models that were used. Altogether, the culture of the school was described as rigorous, models-based, and educationally rich. With regards to this case study, 3 purposefully selected classes, one at the 5th grade, one at the 7th, and one at the 9th grade, were chosen to be participants in the study. Class sizes did not exceed 24 and 31 students and were generally described as diverse across all categories. Freddie was not assisted at any point in his implementation or reading of the spectrum model, and he taught 28 lessons in total. Data were collected with 8 techniques. These included 2 formal semi-structured interviews, the supplementation of teaching film of all lessons using a GoPro Hero 8, systematic, I'll go into this in a second, but to evaluate the teaching film, we use a systematic observation instrument as well. So if it's 2.0, and I'll go on to explain that in a minute, teaching observations and field notes, so 28 occasions, informal interviews, 28 entries, and then critical incident reports and reflections, and then maintaining the journal. So now, this might be a little bit blurry, but I'm going to explain this. So IFITS is an interval recording instrument, and essentially what you do is you observe for 20 seconds and then you record for 20 seconds. Okay, so as you can see on the left, we have a list of definitions of all the teaching styles, including management and other, and then we have the tool that was used to actually code. We'll find the codes. The difference between IFITS 1.0 and 2.0 is that there's been about 20 years of research since Curtin Smith first developed IFITS, and therefore 2.0 includes the inclusion of all the styles that were traditionally considered as going beyond styles. We also added other because we had we weren't sure whether we would find any styles outside of those already identified, and so we wanted to include that metric as well. And I'll go on to kind of explain this a little bit more, but both the first and second author were trained to become trained experts in the original IFITS instrument during their doctoral programs, and then were spent about 8 hours retraining themselves on this instrument again. So qualitative data were analyzed using kind of thematic methods, and this generally consisted of reviewing and organizing the data into the research questions, giving the data codes and descriptors, organizing the data into initial categories, and then developing them into more focused themes, defining and naming themes, and then selecting the data to illustrate in the manuscript. Quantitative data analysis was done through the following methods. So all 28 lessons were coded, right? And again, we completed approximately 8 hours worth of retraining. And so here are the following methods we use to kind of ensure and perform the data analysis. So intra-observer reliability, so reliability within the data, consisted of the authors coding 3 reliability lessons and then recoding these lessons once we'd finished the coding for the elementary, middle, and high school stages. And so that then yielded a 93% reliability between the initial codes and then going back to coding the reliability codes. We also check for observer drift at this stage. And to do that, every 5th and 10th lesson was recorded to check for observer reliability and was kind of cross-checked against the coding of the lesson, and we went back to it. And then that yielded a 91 to 100% reliability. Inter-observer reliability consisted of the codes and the percentages for all the first and second authors' codes being compared across all lessons, the reliability within the data. That yielded 97%. And then having completed this, we had a discrepancy discussion. So essentially, we talked about all the codes that we potentially were not in agreement with. And then as a result of that conversation, we came to 100% kind of congruency and reliability on how we understood those codes. So thereafter, having done all this, we calculated the percentages of the intervals for each style and across all categories. So essentially what that means is, and I'll show you in a second, the number of codes that were generated, for example, for style B, was then divided by the total number of codes within that lesson and was then times by 100, and that's how we found the percentage of the interval. And so we did that for all categories, and then afterwards we came to develop some conclusions about the data. Data reliability and trustworthiness of the analysis were established through multiple means. So data triangulation across 8 techniques, performing multiple follow-up interviews, and then providing feedback on an early version of the manuscript. Okay, so the findings. First, I'm going to talk about the kind of structure, the organizational structure and methods that Freddie employed. So Freddie's reading and interpretation of the spectrum model led him to prioritize 3 objectives for the unit. The first was the students will improve their general sport skills and tchoukball related playing abilities. The students will improve their knowledge of what it means to be a good friend. And then the students will improve their understanding of what it means to flourish as a sport person. And so 5 themes arose here, and there are 3 pedagogical themes and 2 content themes. And all of this kind of led him to summarize, this work is absolutely important and is necessary for the field. Learning of psychomotor and cognitive content can be clearly inhibited or stunted if we've given them, i.e. his students, no lens with which to apply it morally. And so physical journey, this is where Freddie spent most of his time in kind of physical kinesthetic learning through tchoukball. He was observed spending approximately 70% of this time within the unit. And so within this theme, he was kind of primarily concerned with teaching a range of technical skills, tactics, and strategies that are commonplace in the sport. To do so, he employed a range of effective teaching behaviors, be they skill drills, extensions, and refinements, differentiated tasks, constraints-based pedagogies, among others. And for time's sake, I'll come back to the quotes if I'm able to. The second pedagogical theme was communities of friendship for flourishing. And in that, this was what he called to be a contractual, community-oriented, and self-regulatory practice. And so this is where he introduced friendship-based learning and human flourishing to his students. And specifically, he did this through stressing the role and importance of the students in the unit, stressing the importance of student voice, trust, and accountability, and becoming a flourishing community, and then organizing students into friendship groups. Isolated, explicit cognitive and affective tasks and activities were used in order to kind of teach this stuff, and I can elaborate that a bit later. And he was very aspirational with regards to how he wanted to do this, and specifically tried to use friendship, character, or flourishing worksheets. So at the elementary level, he included word definition games, fill in the blank quizzes, for example, whereas at the secondary level, he was using responder discussion prompts, engaging with scenario-based learning, for example. The final pedagogical theme was learning check-in. So this is where he spent least of his time. And in this way, he was kind of checking for understanding, and he did this through 2 ways. He did this through kind of a teacher-directed and then a student-directed. And so teacher-directed plenaries were more so kind of reviewing kind of prior learning, and did this kind of through task presentation at the beginning of end of lessons, whereas student plenaries were kind of done very sporadically in a lot of ways, but it was kind of through silent reflection, reflection questions, for example, or kind of teacher/pupil positive reinforcement. In terms of 2 knowledge themes, physical and this was all about kind of physical and kinesthetic learning through the tchoukball. So his rationale for choosing this area was that he had a firm content knowledge of the sport. Learners had no prior knowledge or experience within the activity, and then this activity was aligned with the school's curriculum. And so obviously the focus that he was teaching obviously varied across his 5th, 7th, and 9th grade students, but essentially it includes teaching about rules, regulations of the sport, technical cues and skills, and then tactics and strategies about how to play. With regards to the flourishing content theme, he combined the cognitive and affective content together, and that's how it kind of merged into flourishing. So from a cognitive perspective, we talked about teaching his students about the knowledge of what it means to be a moral friend, and then helping learners to value a flourishing life as the affect. The virtue education was really the underpinning factor within the friendship building, and specifically, he taught different virtues to the elementary and secondary students based on what he believed was appropriate. And those were the 5 themes. And now go on to research question 2. So Freddie relied on 7 teaching styles throughout his entire kind of 28 lesson pilot study. Specifically, he relied on the management and practice styles heavily throughout all lessons. However, as the units developed, he became generally less reliant on them. And so at the elementary level, as I'll go on to explain, he employed the practice, inclusion, guided discovery, and divergent discovery styles. While at the secondary level, he also employed the reciprocal self-check and convergent styles. And so here is an overview of the kind of the table. And I know that doing kind of systematic observation research is kind of fallen to the wayside, but you know, obviously doing this kind of work gave me an appreciation for what those that have come before me and other scholars have done. So it was a great experience for me. But let's unpack this now. So looking at the percentages of intervals for all groups and categories, and this is at the elementary now. If you look at the total at the bottom, we can see that he employed 4 teaching styles, so B, E, F, and H, and management. Spent most of his time in style B. He also, the second kind of highest amount of time he spent was in management, so 36%. And he spent a little bit of time in styles E, F, and H. Looking at the middle school level, Freddie employed more teaching styles than he did at the elementary level. However, styles B, 33%, and management, 24%, dominated this space. However, his use of more styles, be they more direct styles, or more indirect styles in general, were common. Finally, at the high school level, we can see that he, again, employed more teaching styles compared to the elementary and middle school levels. And then he spent a significant amount of time, again, in practice and management. However, there was an increased amount of time within kind of those styles between both management and practice. Looking at the totals then, and this is the bottom of the big table, these are the kind of the totals of percentages across all kind of groups. So 38% was spent in practice, 22% in management. The total time spent in reproductive teaching styles at the elementary, middle, and high school, so 52%, 51%, 58%, with a total of 54% was spent in reproductive styles. Opposite can be said about the productive styles at the elementary, middle, and high, so 10%, 23%, 20%, with a total of 18%. Data pertaining to styles A, I, J, K, as well as O were not recorded, and therefore not reported in the table. And that's this kind of summary of the findings from research. So we employed a range of styles, although one style, practice, and then management dominant. Finally, coming towards the end of the presentation here, there are 4 kind of significant influencing factors here. So with regards to supporting factors, the culture of models-based practice at Fort Phillip was the most significant component. And so because of the ethos and the culture of models-based practice, because children were used to learning differently as well as experiencing teachers teaching differently, it was relatively a smooth process for Freddie to come into the school and to teach this kind of what he termed as a wacky approach to teaching physical education. The second most significant supportive factor was the power of friendship, in that it was friendship that was the glue that kept his students together and that kind of steered them toward a positive conception of flourishing. And that was the thing that underpinned all of his kind of pedagogies. And I think it's something we need to consider thinking about in our future practice. Alternatively, beginning with the most significant point and lack of time, this is a 28-lesson pilot study, and it was and Freddie was kind of very aware of that. And so, you know, he's talking about teaching them things, but I was only seeing them for a semester. So as he elaborates, the spectrum model is a pedagogical model or small curriculum. It's not necessarily difficult to teach children about character and physical education if you're following a framework, or to explain why it's in students' best interest to pursue flourishing, but carving out a plan for teaching the right sorts of content at the right time can be a logistical challenge. It's also difficult to measure this stuff in the short term. You know, I've known these kids for a semester, for 8 to 10 lessons. I'll need another 12 years with them to see if it's made any difference to their lives. So lack of time is important. Interestingly enough, there's a kind of difference between kind of his observations and our observations when looking at his teaching styles. But he talked about there was a sense of kind of pedagogical inflexibility within this experience, in that he wanted to be even more indirect than he was able to. However, he also talked about the need to teach foundational content, skills, cues, tactics and strategies in order for students to engage with the activity. So whilst he wanted to kind of be have more flexibility, him relying on a kind of a content area that the students weren't familiar with led to a sense of pedagogical inflexibility. So final 2 slides now, and I'm going to talk about some conclusions. This is the first account of the spectrum of the study for the spectrum model in an authentic K-12 context. The main findings include that Freddie's reading and interpretation of the approach led him to prioritize 3 pedagogies and 2 content areas. Freddie's efforts captured the spirit of the spectrum model, and that his main ideas, critical elements, and intended aspirations were at the heart of his planning and enthusiasm for using a range of teaching styles. Finally, Freddie's efforts to implement the model were supported by various things, including the culture of model-based practice and friendship, but they're also inhibited by time and pedagogical inflexibility. Here are, I think, some additional conclusions and contributions, and this kind of potentially could be viewed as a bit more controversial. But while I'm hesitant to suggest that models have use or sell-by dates, we cannot deny the need for and importance of creating new models meant for a modern age, informed by modern objectives, and meant to improve the lives of modern children. And so the idea of moral content knowledge and physical education being grounded in virtue ethical subject matter is also yet to be explored or appreciated thoroughly. And so while pedagogical models can be inspired by cognitive and affective goals versus psychomotor development, this only acted to reinforce the nature of physical subject matter, enhance the program's physical culture, and the importance for becoming physically literate before focusing on alternative objectives. And it's something that critics need to be aware of. So the emphasis on the affect and cognitive only strengthens physical psychomotor development. And that's actually a trend we're seeing in the literature too. It could also be suggested that one's knowledge of how to implement the model can be enhanced by employing the approach on multiple occasions at the same time and with various groups, ages, and ability levels, and as a strategy that teacher educators ought to consider. Finally, while the study was led by an experienced faculty member and not a K-12 teacher, we must engage with our community in unique ways so that the profession can grow, evolve, and aspire to achieve new and more positive benchmarks. And so to that end, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time and look forward to questions.
Thank you, Professor Brunsdon. Yeah, so any questions from the audience or comments? Yes. Yes, okay.
Hello.
Please.
I would like to ask whether there was any data collection about the pupils, if they were involved in any kind of sports outside the school curriculum. And do you think that there is any kind of influence if this involvement of pupils in sports outside the school curriculum could affect the results for spectrum teaching?
And firstly, thank you very much for your question. I think these are really helpful. So I think there's 2 questions here. The first is what kind of methods were used with the students in terms of assessing them maybe in specific ways or also broad ways. The second one is the influence of the student's background outside of physical education. So we actually did quite a lot of assessments on the students. They did a pre and post kind of survey / kind of written test. They did tons of exit tickets. They did tons of the teacher was doing tons of informal interviews with the students. And so kind of student vocal information data was obtained. So the student data was there. Granted, it wasn't as great as what I thought it thought it would be, but it was a really great start for kind of beginning and attempting to measure this sort of stuff. It's complicated. And so we did track things, and I was essentially trying to kind of, I guess, provide opportunities for the teacher to assess this stuff kind of as broadly as they thought. So that was number one. Number two, one thing that we found is that this was a discussion that I've had with the administrators of the school and the PE teacher of the school prior to and immediately following the study. And that's actually a big concern of the school. In the context, obviously, school sport is huge, all over the place, right? But especially in American schools. And obviously there's a huge privatized model of sport that is dominating youth sport at the moment. This is, promoting these kind of win at all cost mentalities. There are also, of the 6 million youth sport coaches based in the US, they argue that only 2 million of those youth sport coaches have actually received any pedagogical training. So the likelihood of kind of potential negative influences or experiences occurring outside of schools is likely, and then subsequently bringing them into schools is also quite high. So we were very aware of that. The teacher didn't provide any kind of socialization profiles or anything like that, or didn't provide any sort of kind of background to the kids. It was more of the PE teachers and the administrators essentially said, okay, these are the classes that I think would work best for scheduling reasons, but also from a diversity standpoint. And I think that was kind of potentially going beyond the scope of the study to kind of track the influence of their profiles. So, but that's a good idea for the future, I think. So thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yes, Nicholas, one more question. Yep, please.
Hi all. Thank you, Jamie, for the presentation. A very interesting study, and I think it gave us a lot of thoughts. I would like to perhaps comment maybe two things, and I would like to ask your opinion about that. One thing I could say after seeing all these data is the fact that although that the teacher, the assumption that although that the teacher doesn't have knowledge on the spectrum, actually we are using the spectrum in real practice. How much this assumption is correct or not? What do you think? And I have one more thing, but
I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with the spectrum itself and the language that is associated with it, but are teaching in ways which the spectrum has already envisioned, outlined, defined. So I think you're correct in that.
Okay. I think another thing I would comment is, at least personally, I do follow your work, and I do like the theoretical work that you are doing in relation with the spectrum. And I don't know how much work we need to do further, I mean, in the future. But this is just a question, a thought of mine. How much you think that the spectrum as a pedagogical framework is could be the basis of for the generation of new models, as you mentioned at some point in the end?
I think you're absolutely spot on. This is actually another kind of perspective that I'm developing right now. I honestly think that the spectrum itself is obviously it's a conceptual framework meant to describe the act of teaching. It's meant to describe, and essentially it's a model, or it's a way of thinking that helps to align teacher intentions and teacher practices. right? So I think that's key to it. So the spectrum, and I was kind of reviewing this on the Spectrum website. The developmental channels are all about developing character and attributes across a variety of channels or areas of kind of human life. Now, do I think that having the channels all scattered is good? I think it is, but this is where I think the flourishing stuff comes in. Flourishing is the umbrella which captures all of those individual channels. So to pursue a flourishing life, we can't neglect our psychomotor development. We also can't neglect our emotional development. So it's the idea that if we're pursuing a flourishing life, we're teaching students to pursue their potential in life, then we can position the framework or the teaching styles under an umbrella of flourishing, and therefore the spectrum is given more direction. So I absolutely think you're right. I think we could do the same thing with various other philosophies and theories. I agree with you that the conceptual framework of the spectrum could provide the basis for new models, but also the alternative point is that the spectrum has itself already been used to assist teachers to teach other models. So, for example, that's, at least to my understanding, people learning to teach fourth education rely on knowledge from the spectrum to guide their practices from being direct to indirect, if that makes sense. So
Thank you, Jamie. I think the discussion will continue.
thank you.
Okay. So I think time is due to time limitation. I think I would like to close this session. I know that Heidi would like to ask questions or comments on Brunston's presentation, but you can contact him after this section. Okay.
I'm happy to stay on the
So-
Zoom too. If I'm happy to if you want to end the recording and I can stay on and continue the conversation if that's better.
Sure.
That's
Yes,
fine. I can
so-
leave the window open for a few minutes.
Really, thank
Okay.
you.
So I think thank you for our presenters for your thoughtful presentations, and to our participants for your participation in today's event. And before we end this first section, I would like to provide two more pieces of information for you. Firstly, the second section of the 2024 SITL workshop series will be held at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on March 22nd. We look forward to seeing you again, and you are welcome to invite colleagues or friends interested in the spectrum to participate. Secondly, the SITL supports academic efforts by initiating several grant programs. The conference grant is open for application now. The research grant award is available and closes at the end of March. And the sample spectrum episodes grant will be reopened on May 1st. So if you want the support to do spectrum related research, please visit the SITL official website or reach out to us directly. So in the end, thank you for your participation. And yes, of course, if you have you want to discuss with Dr. Brunsdon more, you can stay. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Should we wait or continue?
So thank you all. I mean, what Min just said is that in case you would like to continue the discussion, you are free to do that. Okay. Hi, Domenico.
See ya.
I will stick
Thank you.
around and facilitate anyone who would like to stay and continue discussion.
Brilliant. Thanks, all of them.
Mhm.
Okay, so for the rest of us, bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye. So, Halia, I think you can start to ask your question or comment.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, thank you for the great presentation. I would like to ask about the observation reports. We see
Yes.
that the management and the practice styles dominates the model. Do you think this should be spread more evenly, or should we have such an effort as a teacher?
So, in this context, this teacher relied on those styles because he felt like those were the most appropriate ones. But the idea is that as the unit, if this unit were to have another 10 or 20 lessons, he wouldn't be relying on the practice or management as much. He would be engaging with more indirect styles. So I think you're absolutely right there.
Mhm. Okay. Should we finish or?
Yeah, unless Alex or Dario has got a question, then I think we're probably good.
Good. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much. All right. Nice to meet you all, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah,
Yes.
I hope to see you guys during session 2.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks.